I'm here looking at the weather forecast on my phone and scrolling down here to the day by day. There is no rain forecast until next Tuesday or Wednesday. Meanwhile, I think it's rained just 2 or 3 times in the last month. And by the way, I was outside camping both of those times. It's been bone dry in the North Country. So dry, it's unprecedented in some places. We put some data to the drought on today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Long Run Wealth, an SEC-registered investment advisor in Lake Placid, providing comprehensive wealth management, retirement, and financial planning solutions. LongRunWealth.com. And the Devlin Inn and Suites, Lake Placid, welcoming families, athletes, and groups to the Olympic Village, offering Adirondack mountain views and dog-friendly accommodations. TheDevlinNY.com.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Wednesday, October 1st. First up, so-called inflation rebate checks are in the mail from New York State, but you're going to have to pay federal taxes on them. Jimmy Vielkind reports for the New York Public News Network.
Checks for up to $400 are in the mail, but state officials say people will need to list whatever they get on their tax return next year. Fiscal experts say Governor Hochul could have avoided the federal tax hit if she structured the program differently. E.J. McMahon works for the conservative Manhattan Institute. He says the Democratic governor could have just given New Yorkers a credit on their state returns.
There were other ways to skin this cat, but none of them would have yielded the kind of political press release the governor wanted.
Hochul says the checks provide relief to recent inflation. The governor's budget director says she decided to send checks directly to New Yorkers so the money would get out the door quickly. In Albany, I'm Jimmy Vielkind for the New York Public News Network.
New York State has already legalized marijuana, and state lawmakers are considering whether psychedelic mushrooms come next. The New York Public News Network's John Campbell has that story.
Joseph McKay is a retired New York City firefighter who responded to the 9/11 attacks. He dealt with intense feelings of grief and anguish as he worked at Ground Zero for months. He thought he hit rock bottom.
Then I had my first attack. I woke up at 1 a.m. feeling as if someone had just stabbed me in the eye with a burning hot ice pick.
It was a cluster headache. Soon he'd be getting as many as 8 a day. He struggled to cope. He was abusing painkillers. And then he heard about a study that suggested psilocybin could help him. So he tried a low dose.
The excruciating pain that I endured for over a decade was gone. I was in remission. Psilocybin gave me my life back.
Psilocybin is the active compound in psychedelic mushrooms. New York State lawmakers held a hearing to weigh whether to legalize it for health purposes. Magic mushrooms are illegal on the federal level, but a growing body of research suggests they could help with a wide array of ailments, from anxiety and depression to headache disorders and even stroke patients. Assemblymember Amy Paulin is a Westchester County Democrat who chairs the Health Committee and led the hearing. She said the committee was interested in
perhaps making it legal and appropriate for medical providers to dispense a product that they frankly have been acknowledging is effective for their patients.
It's too early to say whether the state legislature will take up the issue. Lawmakers are due to return to the Capitol in January. In Albany, I'm John Campbell for the New York Public News Network.
In Canton, this summer was the driest on record, beating a previous record from 1944. Over this past June, July, and August, there were only about 2 inches of rainfall. Catherine Wheeler spoke with St. Lawrence University geology professor Alexander Stewart to put the data in perspective.
What I find interesting always as a geologist is that, and a lot of you will recognize this when you're driving around the county. Of course, the St. Lawrence River is fine. It's a large main tributary. It heads out to the Atlantic. But even the small brooks like Trout Brook or Grass River or the Little River, no matter how dry it is, the fact that there hadn't been a rainfall event essentially in 3 months did not effectively impact the overall net water flow through those water systems. And the important notification there, you may not be able to kayak it because it's a little low, but it's never gone completely dry, is that a lot of our river systems are driven by groundwater flow. So we have a healthy groundwater system here. If you're on a well, you might have had reduced opportunity as the groundwater has been reduced from the lack of surface water infiltration. But the river systems generally in the county, even the small brooks, were maintained thanks to groundwater addition.
Looking at some of this data, having our record low rainfall, but we also have a record low amount of rainfall days?
Yes, we can have lots of tiny rainfall events, which accrue to a significant amount of rainfall. It could be a record wet summer of a bunch of tiny little rainy days, or we could have a lot of dry days and a few extreme rainfall events that could then make our weather appear to be a normal summer. We had driest summer and the least number of rainy days, so it was sort of double dry. And that any rainfall event we had was minuscule or essentially negligible. And we had, I think on average, about 18 days, had measurable precipitation over the period of June, July, and August. So record dry precipitation, not much coming from the sky, in the least amount of precipitation days, leading to perceptively the best summer for recreation probably in the region, in a century.
I wanted to talk a little about where you got the data and what areas it includes.
That's always a good question. What is sort of the radius of viability for our data set? St. Lawrence County, northwestern New York, northwestern Adirondacks is a data desert. It's never been on anyone's radar, meteorological, geologically, and biologically. There's a lot of data density losses in our region. So the data comes from the Canton station, supported by the Cornell Cooperative, and it goes back more or less continuous to 1922. But even since about 2013, even those data aren't updated and certified, so some data has to be called from wonderground.com, local or Messina airport station, and you pull in those data to sort of flesh out even the past decade.
I was wondering how you think that this summer, particularly dry summer, it plays into how we can expect climate change to play out in the North Country, especially when overall we're predicted to have wetter weather.
Yeah, if we look at the temperature trend, I think we have a slight increase in temperature. I can look at the data, but I think what's important is increased temperature, increased capacity for moisture to be held in the atmosphere. That's a working basic understanding of sort of atmospheric conditions. Warmer equals more moisture. We recognize that this summer, despite there being rainfall events, we had a very muggy and humid summer. It never broke into precipitation. And it looks like by looking at our rainfall volume or rainfall depth through time and our percent of days, we have increased precipitation a little bit over the past century, but not an increase on average of precipitation days, which means our precipitation events probably are getting grander or bigger, and it's likely they could be getting more stormy, a little more turbulent as we increase temperature and heat in the atmosphere. Without this blip, if we looked at the data, we'd have a different perception of the precipitation through time. So we do have a record low in precipitation. We do have a record low in the number of days where we had a measurable precipitation. But it is a blip. It's an outlier. It's a record. And like all records, they stand in this particular case for at least 100 years. It's once in a 100-year event. So if I look at the graph here just briefly, it looks like the variability could be increasing, and we probably see that also in the snowfall record. And lack of consistency, remember you're going to have a lot more bigger events and a lot more drier events, a little less stable summers.
That was St. Lawrence University geologist Alexander Stort speaking with Catherine Wheeler. NCPR's climate change and health reporting is made possible through the generous support of Margot and John Ernst. We have more news all the time at ncpr.org. Music today by You Bred Raptors of Hoffmeister near Pasico Lake and Danny Thomas of Canton. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.